There's a cartoon drawing that I like. It's a stick-drawn church with Jesus on the outside trying to push the front door open while a large crowd inside pushes against the door as the leader exclaims, "Don't let him in. He'll change everything." And change is not just an issue for churches. I recently saw another cartoon actually on Facebook in 3 frames of a speaker at a podium talking to a crowd below. And in the first frame, the speaker asks, "Who wants change?" And every single person in the crowd has their hands raised high. And in the second frame, the speaker asks, "Who wants to change?" No one in the crowd has their hands up. And in the third frame, the speaker asks, "Who wants to lead the change?" The crowd's gone. There's truth to both of those cartoons. People, even those of us who admire and follow a change agent like Jesus and actually desire change, still fight and push against change. Jesus, when it comes right down to us, many of us resist change, both in the church and outside. It's quite ironic that those of us in churches do that, since Christianity is based on Jesus, who offers the hope of change and asks us and teaches us to be a part of the change. And we want change for the better for Jesus and his way. We praise and hope to emulate Jesus' role as a change agent in first century Palestine and throughout history right up to today. Jesus and his way are both about radical change, radical transformation. There's no way of getting around that fact. Or the fact that promises of radical change are what draw most of us to the church to begin with. Jesus offers change for the better. And that offer seems very simple on its face. We are offered a better life for all if we accept as our primary purpose loving God, loving self, and loving others. In a word, the offer is the verb love. If we love, things will be better. It's about as simple as it can be, except that love as a verb requires change, radical change, change that makes us very uncomfortable. The kind of love we are called to means we have to care and desire for the well-being of others and actually go out and act for their well-being. Not just others that we select, but all others, even people we don't like, even people we are taught to not like, and even people who are our enemies. And all this definitely includes people we've been told the Bible tells us not to care for or provide for their well-being. And it's no accident that in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus lifted up an unloving, not for others' well-being, scriptural command, and he overturned it. He models how we are to approach unloving Bible verses and religious doctrines. He directly challenges and changes them. I like how the Message version of the Bible paraphrases the Sermon on the Mount, and so I'm going to read a bit of it. I certainly can't preach better than Jesus, so I'm going to tell you what Jesus said. He said, "There's another old saying that deserves a second look. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Is that going to get us anywhere? Here's what I propose. Don't hit back at all. If someone strikes you, stand there and take it. If someone drags you into court and sues for the shirt off your back, gift wrap your best coat and make a present. If someone takes unfair advantage of you, use the occasion to practice the servant life. No more tit for tat stuff. Live generously." You're familiar with the old written law, love your friend, and its unwritten companion, hate your enemy. I'm challenging that. I'm telling you to love your enemies. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, respond with subtle moods of prayer, for then you are working out of your true self, your God-created self. This is what God does. He gives his best. His Son to born and the rain to nourish to everyone, regardless the good and the bad, the nice and the nasty. If all you do is love the lovable, do you expect a bonus? Anybody can do that. You simply say hello to those who greet you. Do you expect a medal? Any run-of-the-mill sinner does that. In a word, what I'm saying is, grow up. Your kingdom subjects. Now live like it. Live out your God-created identity. Live generously and graciously toward others the way God lives towards you. That's from Jesus' sermon. It's powerful. It's radical. It's transformative love stuff, all requiring us to change and be a part of the change. Because as Jesus makes it clear, following him is not about simply nodding in agreement with him or just carrying in our hearts about others and desiring in our minds that they have well-being. And that's hard enough to pull off for sure. But Jesus insists we pair agreeing with him and having feelings and thoughts about love with actual love in action. He tells us love is a verb. It's doing. And the doing part isn't simple at all. We have to change. Change the way we and the culture treat others. We cannot even hate our enemies. There's no more eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth stuff, even though it literally says that in the Bible. With Jesus, such rules are tossed out, and they are simply replaced with love. And that is the whole of Jesus' religion in a word, a verb. He wants the best in us. Love to be put into action for all the rest of us. And there's the rub. Putting love into action is hard work that requires change. It's easier to hold the door shut and bar Jesus from coming in than to simply love. Be our best. It's also easy to get into the habit of staying at home, just admiring Jesus and thinking about love, than it is to get up and out to do the hard work of church. Which brings me to the lectionary lesson that Anne read so well. One of the points of the epistle of Colossians is that God loves us, and we are to get up and be loved in return. The approach is very similar to Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. We are to love not just God in the cosmic sense, but love God in others. All others. And the reading indicates that doing that, following Jesus that way through church, will bear fruit. An author of that letter, who we're not quite sure is Paul, points out that he and others are praying that the church members in Colossae be filled with the knowledge of God's will and in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. And he tells us the reason for the prayer is so that they may lead lives worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing to God as they bear fruit in every good work and as they grow in the knowledge of God. Now, good work referred to is all the love stuff I've been going on about, not just this morning, but for 8.5 years that we've been together in ministry. The reason we do ministry together as church is that all this love work is best done as a community. Together we not only work for love for one another, but we work for love for others. And when that work is done together, it is far more powerful and far more effective than working alone. Even Jesus did not do ministry alone. He did it in and with a community. And he did so not just for that community's sake, but for the sake of all people. It was a spiritual need for Jesus and each of his disciples to actively be in community. And that means the whole truth for us and everyone in church today. COVID prevented and changed being active in church for many of us. And while change is always hard, we need to change it back. So we are all actively involved in church, in this church community. I mentioned in a recent mailing in the July my newsletter, how it talks about God classes, which are held at 11 o'clock down in the chapel right after church. In those talks about God classes, we have had lively gatherings full of deep and meaningful conversations about God, religion, and church. Just kind of let the Spirit pull us wherever it will as we go there. And each week, we seem to touch upon the central importance that community, working together and meeting together, holds for us as church and as humans. And how together we magnify love and action more than we ever could alone. In the course of just a few weeks in our tag classes, we've discussed how, as a community of faith, we seek to focus on the presence of God in our lives and how we can add to and be a part of that divine presence. We've noted that this includes, of course, meeting together, worship. We focus on God as church family on Sundays in our divine sanctuary, hear divine music, and divine word as we pray to the divine and gather as one to worship the divine. In addition to regularly being present at worship, we have discussed how important it is that we also provide services to the church that support our missions and ministries, and not just with monetary gifts, but with time and talent and personal, present, supporting church activities. It includes letting others know about the church and progressive Christianity as well. And we do all of these things as members of a church family because they are part and parcel of our covenantal relationship with each other and with God. Christians somewhat uniquely understand that God works through us personally. We are each capable of incarnating God, but we have to get up and act in ways that do that incarnation. We need to act like Jesus, not just talk about him and think about him. And we do that acting best together as the whole church, rather than as one, which is why the church is called the body of Christ. And alone, we aren't. We can act like Christ alone, but together, we can be the very body of Christ in action in the world, in action out in our community. And in my letter, I noted how Pastor Murrow was at our June stewardship meeting, and we discussed how church members mutually agree and depend on one another to provide 5 basic actions as often as they can in the life of the church, and how we need to do them all. And we do need to do them often. And the first action is to be in prayer, to have two-way communications with God, speaking and listening to the divine. And the second action we covenant to do is to be present in community. That is to attend worship and events and meetings, and not just at Christmas or Easter or once in a while, but regularly. And COVID understandably altered our ability to be present, but we need to do it now. We should be coming back to that. That change needs to happen in order for us to fully be church. Participating often in church matters to the life of the whole church for sure, but it also matters to our own personal spiritual lives. And the third action is to respond to the blessings God offers to us with offerings of our own to God in the form of time and talent and treasure. And the fourth action is related to the third action, that we follow through with the offerings and generously give to the church with money if we are able, but just as importantly, give acts of service to the church. This means volunteering to do things. We need to support this church's many efforts at being God's dynamic presence in the community and in our lives with our own hands and our feet, our voice, and yes, our wallets and our pocketbooks. This church cannot do all of the amazing, dynamic work it does, and we want it doing without offering time and talent and treasure. It just can't. No one else is going to help us be the church except us and God working through us. And the fifth and final action we need to do is tell others about the church and our form of Christianity and invite people to worship at events and activities. The church cannot and it will not grow if members do not make an effort to invite others to church. Over 80% Visitors come because they are personally invited by people regularly in the pews of the church. Pastors don't grow churches. Members do. And the conversation is a tag in the stewardship. God, the church clergy and lay leaders thinking that as we emerge out of COVID, it would be good for all of the church family to consider getting back into the habit of doing all of the 5 basic actions that we may have held back on during COVID time. It's time to change and fully get back to being church, the body of Christ. And we all be more prayerful, present in church, provide offerings, serve the church, and start inviting folks to our church or back to our church. These acts will not only serve God and the church and better the world, but they will better our spiritual lives and our whole